joined today by Representative Lindsay Powell. Your bill bans the use of Apple AirTags to track someone. For anyone who may not know, how does an Apple AirTag work?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. AirTags are devices that are intended to track someone's location. In their original use, it was meant to make sure that you would be able to put it on your luggage if it went missing as you're in the airport, or perhaps put it in a vehicle to make sure that if you were separated from your car, you'd be able to find it. Unfortunately, we're finding that people are using them outside of their intended use, and that's what my bill addresses.
How are people using Apple AirTags to stalk other people?
Absolutely. It's actually incredibly unfortunate. We've seen instances in Pittsburgh, across the Commonwealth, and across this nation where people are utilizing AirTags to follow people against their will and against their consent. It could be as quick as passing somebody in a mall and dropping an AirTag in their purse or on their person, and then using their personal device attached to that AirTag to follow their location. We've seen them also prominently in stalking instances where someone who may know their victim will plant an AirTag either on their person or in their vehicle or in their purse or bag or what have you, and are able to find their location without that person being aware of it. And so there have been lots of ways that people have used these AirTags nefariously and, again, outside of their intended use.
How did this issue come to your attention?
It's actually something that I've had friends experience where folks have gone out to a restaurant or what have you, and then realized that there was a device either in their person or other Apple devices will let you know that there's an AirTag in your presence. And so you often will get an alert, or sometimes you'll just be rummaging through, the purse that you bring out and find this thing. And so it's happened to people that I know, but also in the world of intimate partner violence, domestic violence. This is a huge issue. And so making sure that people are safe around this Commonwealth is critically important to us in our office. And so as I've heard of this experience anecdotally from friends, as I've heard of this experience from advocates in this space, it was critically important for us to legislate to ensure that the law is keeping up with technology.
You used the term nefarious a few moments ago, and the text of the bill uses the term nefarious motive. Is there a legal definition for what a nefarious motive is?
I think it really speaks to the intent of the bill, or in the intent of the action, so that a judge would be able to determine what that would be. For us, it was really important because we know that AirTags are used for other instances, and there are carve-outs in our bill to ensure that those instances are safeguarded. So parents use AirTags often for their children. They'll put them in their backpack or what have you, so that they know where their children are at all times. Folks who, for example, possibly own several vehicles, as I've mentioned, are able to put an AirTag in them so that they're able, if their car was stolen or someone was using their car without their consent, they'd be able to find them. We wanted to make sure that those instances were protected, but the ones where we know someone is using this device to track them without their consent was explicitly addressed.
Has this become the more common form of stalking as technology? Everyone has a phone. Has this been more common than the traditional in-person stalking that we hear about on TV?
Yeah, so the Department of Justice put out a study recently where it said 7.5 million Americans experience stalking every year. And of those victims, 80% of them have reported that technology was part of that stalking. And so we're seeing, as technology advances, people are using these devices against, again, outside of their intended use, but people are using them to almost upgrade the way that we think about stalking. Stalking is no longer just someone following you outside of a mall, just someone standing outside of your house. Criminals are getting smarter and smarter and using technology to do these deeds. And we need to make sure that our laws reflect what we're seeing in our communities, and they're keeping up with the speed of technology as well.
How can law enforcement catch a perpetrator who's been using an AirTag to stalk somebody?
Yeah, so this bill would make it so that it would be including in the stalking statute, so that when it comes time to charge someone, that this would be an instance where an officer can point to this type of stalking. But again, this is already happening in our communities. And so it's another way that law enforcement are able to point to what they're seeing on the ground and make sure that it's reflected in law.
What are the punishments if you get caught stalking somebody using an air tag? Is it the same as if you get caught stalking somebody in person?
Yes, so it's just adding it to the statute. So whatever a judge would deem the consequences of stalking, this would be just another way, again, to make sure that the law reflects what we're seeing on the ground, just adding another definition of what stalking would be.
Does this bill only address air tags? Because I know that there are different apps and things that parents can use to watch their children. Is there things put in, like a sentence or something in this bill that also protects people from being stalked using apps? Or is that harder to get somebody against their will because that one's more of a consensual log on kind of thing?
That's a great question. So this bill specifically addresses devices, but we know, again, talking to folks, particularly in the intimate partner violence and the domestic violence space, people are getting smarter and smarter. And so there are apps that perpetrators use to follow their victims and their targets. And so this specifically addresses devices, but there is absolutely opportunity as we're seeing criminals get smarter and smarter that we should explore other ways to keep people safe.
Apple has been sued over the fact that these devices have the ability to stalk someone. Have they made any effort to address this issue at all?
So I think that they would say that they have, but we know that it continues to happen. And so we wanted to make sure that in Pennsylvania, we included this definition of stalking so that there is recourse for victims as it happens to them.
Do other states have any laws similar to this in place?
Other states have, and Pennsylvania was kind of part of the first wave of states to start to adopt this type of legislation. So there are other states that are looking at or have passed legislation similar, and we are amongst that first wave.
Your bill recently passed the House. What are its next steps in the legislature process? Very excited. This is my very first bill. And so it's wonderful to see that my colleagues and others see the necessity of this bill. Its next steps would be to go to the Senate, goes to committee, the Judiciary Committee, and then hopefully after passage out of committee and then to the full floor of the Senate, hopefully it sees the governor's desk. On to another topic. You have recently been appointed to the Pennsylvania Children's Trust Fund Board. Can you tell us about that trust fund? Absolutely. So this is a new appointment that I am very excited about. The Pennsylvania Trust Fund Board is dedicated to funding community-based prevention, child abuse and neglect programs. It actually is funded by the surcharge on marriage licenses or divorce complaints filed with the Commonwealth. And so it's a publicly funded fund that allows for us to provide grants to community-based organizations that are keeping our children safe as well. What would your role be on the board? To just vote for legislation or support them? How would you help this cause? Yeah, I see my role on the board being one of the members that are able to refine the process. For me, we know that there are so many organizations and agencies out there that are caring for and keeping safe our youngest Pennsylvanians. And so my job is to make sure that they know about this fund, that they're applying for this fund. My hope too is to make sure that some of the groups that are dealing with some of our kind of more severely neglected, super high needs young people will be aware of this fund and be looking for its funding as well. What inspired you to get involved in children's issues? How could you not be, passionate about these issues? For me, I think, again, if we're talking about our youngest Pennsylvanians, if we're talking about the future, making sure that they're safe and at home, out of school, in schools is paramount. And so this fund, I think, is really critically important to making sure some of those groups on the front line have everything that they need to make sure that our young people survive and thrive. You were one of 3 people chosen from the Pennsylvania House to represent your fellow colleagues in the House on this board. How were you chosen?
The appointment came from our speaker, Joanna McClinton, as well as the chair of the Children and Youth Committee, Donna Bullock. And so I was honored to be selected and very honored to serve.
Now on to another topic. Back in March, you and Representative Shelby Labs introduced the Victims of Violence Relocation Act. Can you tell us about this bill?
Absolutely. This bill, working with my colleague, Representative Labs, seeks to ensure that folks living within public housing who have been victims of crime are able to find appropriate housing for themselves within the public housing space. Right now, if you have been a victim of crime, for victims of intimate partner violence, there are provisions so that those victims are able to relocate or perhaps get a public housing voucher to find additional housing. If you have been a victim of a crime and have diagnosed PTSD, those same protections and provisions don't apply. And so we're simply looking to expand it so that other victims of crime are able to find safe, secure, and dignified housing.
This is a bipartisan bill. How did this come about? How did you get people from both the Democrats and the Republicans to kind of come together on this issue?
I believe very deeply that there are so many things that are common sense that we can work together on very easily when it comes to protecting the most vulnerable amongst us, when it comes to ensuring that everyone has a safe and dignified space to call home. I think that these are rights and not privileges that we share across the aisle. And so I was very excited that Representative Labs and other Republicans have decided to join us on this journey.
How does this bill differ from other anti-domestic violence or other housing bills?
Yeah, I think this one is very specific and targeted. We want to make sure that all victims of crime, not just intimate partner violence, but all victims of crime are able to find dignified housing. And so this was created and crafted to be very specific, very narrow, as we know that there are lots of ways that we can protect those who have suffered from crime, but this is intended to be very, very specific, very narrow, and hopefully very common sense.
Where is this bill in the legislative process now?
It's still in committee within the Judiciary Committee, but hoping that it will see a vote soon and make its way through the rest of the legislative process.
How do your colleagues in the House feel about this bill?
I'm hoping that they feel, as I've said, that the bill is straightforward, that the bill addresses a need that we see in our community, and that it's common sense. I think across the aisle, we all feel that our job here is to make sure that those with the least among us are able to be successful in our communities, and I include victims of crime in this space as well. And so I'm hopeful that our colleagues see the merit, see the goal in this bill, and help us to push it forward.
Back on to your air tags legislation, when it goes to the Senate, how do you think it's going to do? Has anyone in the Senate said anything so far?
Not so far. We're working with the Judiciary Committee right now, just making sure that they feel comfortable with the bill. There hopefully is a version that will be circulating very soon, or our version will be circulating with them very soon. I will say our bill passed out of the House 199-1. And so I feel like we have the bipartisanship already showed in the vote in the House, and hoping that that same spirit will be matched in the Senate.
You've proposed another bill that would make internet accessibility more affordable. How did you get involved in this issue?
So digital equity is critically important. It's not an urban issue. It's not a rural issue. It's an issue that affects all of us. I think during the pandemic, it truly laid bare to people that having access to the internet wasn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Having the internet means that you're able to apply for jobs, you're able to apply for assistance, you're able to do homework as a kid. As we know, so many young people have a lot of their assignments online now. And so as everyone was forced to work from home and try to figure out their lives with our new reality with the pandemic, it became very clear that we needed to really think about digital equity and digital inclusion. Our bill, working with Representative Ronnie Green out in Philadelphia, Representative Erin Abney here in Pittsburgh, our bill seeks to mimic the federal program of the ACP, the Affordable Connectivity Program, to make sure that as it expires, we have something that matches that for Pennsylvanians. This program provides eligible households with a credit towards internet, about $30 per service, up to 75 for households. But for our income restricted families, making sure that they had a little bit of help to make sure that they have access to the internet that they critically need.
You mentioned the Federal Affordable Connectivity Program. When does that expire? You mentioned it expiring. Is that relatively soon?
Yes, unfortunately. And so Congress is now having conversations about what an extension may look like, but there is no guarantee. And so it really is incumbent on us as states to make sure that we have programs that we know that families are using to make sure that they're connected to the internet that's important to them.
Do you know how many families in Pennsylvania utilize this program?
I can tell you in Pennsylvania, but that program is highly utilized. As I was saying, it's not just urban families, it's not just rural families where we know both have unique issues with connectivity, but it's a commodity that's super important to all of us as a Commonwealth, and a highly utilized federal program, which tells us that it would be highly utilized state program as well.
Who is eligible for this program?
Under our legislation, it would be for families that qualify for assistance like LIHEAP, like SNAP, and so making sure that families that are already receiving public assistance or social assistance, that we would be able to provide this as a service as well.
Is there a limit to how many electronics per household or family is allowed to be used under this program?
It's more for the, it will dictate the speed at which you'll get internet. So more the kind of gigawatts rather than devices or connectivity to said internet. We were really as well in our bill being intentional and trying to make sure that we're capturing young people. Our eligibility also includes having a school-age child, as well as meeting some of the income requirements.
Are there restrictions to what can be done under this program? I'm picturing it kind of like in school when you'd go on a computer, certain websites would be blocked. Is there anything kind of like that as a part of this program at all?
No, it would just be to allow for someone to have access to a local provider. Again, allowing them to surf the internet as someone would regularly.
Where is the funding for this program going to come from within the state?
Yes. So this is the conversation we're having with appropriations as well as with our Senate colleagues to see what the appropriate space would be. As you can imagine, it's a big cost, but we know in order to do bold things, sometimes that sticker price is a little high. And so we're working with colleagues across the Capitol to make sure that this program is funded in a way that makes sense and implemented in a way that's impactful.
Do you know how much funding Pennsylvania gets now from the federal program, and maybe that will be similar?
Yeah, I'm not sure of that number offhand, but again, the hope is that hopefully the federal government will continue this program, and that this will be an afterthought, but we can't keep families in the gap. We can't keep families waiting to see if this will be something that they can continue to depend on. And so we're trying to make sure that we've got our ducks in a row here in Pennsylvania, just in case the federal government doesn't come through.
Where is this bill in the legislature now?
So we are working, we circulated our co-sponsorship memo. We've got a lot of colleagues that have signed on to it. We're looking to introduce, as we have some more information, to make sure that it's implementable in a way that makes sense for not just consumers, but obviously for stakeholders across this area of interest.
You mentioned a few times that you're relatively new to your position as a representative. How are you enjoying it? What have you learned so far?
It has been such a wonderful experience. I am honored and privileged to be able to serve my community in this way. It's been wonderfully exciting. I feel like we have an opportunity as a Commonwealth to really get things done for our residents, not just in the city of Pittsburgh, where I have the honor of representing, but across our state. And so I feel very excited by this momentum and energized by this momentum and excited to see what's next.
What motivated you to run for office?
I felt like in our community, as the seat became available, my predecessor had run for another office. I'd worked in the community for quite some time. I'd been a part of our local economic development engine here in Pittsburgh. I've served on several boards as well as community organizations for my lovely neighborhood of Lawrenceville here in Pittsburgh. And it was clear to me that my neighbors were looking in their next state representative for someone who had the professional experience working on impactful policy, working with legislators and in working on important legislation, as well as the lived experience. And I felt that I had the opportunity to bring both together and to serve the people of the 21st District and ran for office last summer.
Amazing. Well, we've been speaking with Representative Lindsay Powell. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about the things that we're doing for the 21st District.